Here today. I hope that you continue to eat, but I'm going to get us started by introducing our speaker for today. So our very own Dr. Wayne Yankus trained at New York University Bellevue Medical Center in pediatrics. He has practiced general pediatrics in Ridgewood and Midland Park for 33 years. And in the last several years, he has provided locums or assistant area practices. He is a emeritus staff at the Valley Hospital in Ridgewood, New Jersey. He is the past president of the New Jersey chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and in 2010, a candidate for its national presidency. Founder of the Chapter School Health Annual Program for School Doctors and Nurses, which is celebrating its 32nd year. He received the American Academy of Pediatrics Milton J. Sen Award for contributions to the nation's school health and was national chair of the AAP School Health Section. He is currently medical director of the Ridgewood and Leonia schools in Bergen County, where he resides, and he is a beloved member of our St. E's family. So we're going to give it all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So as we sit here eating our soup and our salad and all the rest of it and thinking about wellness, the bottom line is we're well enough to be here. And for that, we're grateful. And so to start out, I picked this flower from Florida only because it's in bloom. And I like to think that no matter what our ages are, we're still in bloom. And we have more to come because there's more seasons ahead. Now, with the grace of Ryan and the good help of doing this, having been a high school teacher before I went to medical school, I taught at a school in Connecticut called the Taft School, which at the time was an all-boys school. And if you can only imagine what it was like at Saturday morning classes at 8 o'clock, if you were going to show a film or do slides, and the projector didn't work, And then it was like everybody had half their football uniform on, one foot out the door, and the other half of whatever in, and you were trying to build attention. So in any case, I appreciate your attention. Nobody's going to sports after this. I don't see any lacrosse sticks, so we're good. But Ryan tells me this is how it works. So in any case, whoops, Ryan. Am I doing the right? There we go. So what does wellness mean? I mean, we think each individually about how we're well, and what does it really mean? Well, you can come up with habits and so forth, but essentially, it's practicing healthy habits daily so that we stay well, because nobody wants to be sick. We all want to be well. And so we're looking basically for outcomes. We want to not just survive, but we want to thrive. And I think that's true for children. It's true for young adults. It's certainly true for those of us, and I can speak for myself for the older age group because I am one. So what is wellness? I mean, everybody's got an idea of what it means to be well. Some people being well just means I didn't go to the doctor this year. Some means I don't have to take the heart pill anymore. For some people, it means my cholesterol is okay. I don't need the cholesterol medicine. I'm well. Well, yes, that's an achievement. But essentially, wellness is active. Wellness is work. That's the key. And basically, no matter where you are in life, it's the pursuit of a goal. Now, we recognize death is real. None of us will escape it, and none of us know when it'll happen. But on the other hand, we can avoid it for as long as we can try. So pursuit of a goal, wellness is about being active. Obviously, getting out, doing things, walking, whether it's walking the dog, whether it's getting up, taking care of your grandkids, whatever it is, it's being active. Being aware. My knee hurts today. I am aware. And I know that I can ignore it. I know that I can load up on medicine, or I know that I can go see my friendly orthopedist who will make all sorts of suggestions. The bottom line is I have choices, but I am aware. And acknowledging how we feel. It's amazing how many patients come into an office that are either very descriptive of what's going on in their lives or really just say, I'm fine. I'm fine. This is an annual physical for my company or whatever. I'm fine. But they're really not. And so as a consequence, you turn and say, but your blood pressure was 200 over 140. That's not normal. Well, that's what it usually is. No, it shouldn't be if you don't want a stroke. So here we go. So essentially, acknowledging how we feel is key also to wellness. And I always say to people, wellness is a gift. Because you have to understand that there are, a lot of things to think about that. Because if you click on wellness on the computer, what's going to show up is Amazon and all the things you can buy to stay well. And the next part of that, when you click on it, is the fact that wellness in 2024 is a $1.8 trillion business. And that's exercise, that's weight reduction, that's all those things. So when we say wellness is a gift, it's a gift for us to be here. It's a gift for us to know who we are, where we are, and why we got here. There are degrees of wellness. Wellness is physical health, which hopefully all of us enjoy mostly, but we know that there are people among us that don't enjoy great physical health. And from my standpoint as a pediatrician, there were wonderful kids that we took care of who were absolutely wonderful and healthy, but then there were kids with cerebral palsy who were never going to be fully healthy. They were always going to have accommodations, whether it was from their parents, the school, or ultimately their siblings when the parents passed. We also know for adults, just take asthma. People that have asthma are always going to probably have asthma and are going to need medication. It's like high blood pressure. There are things that we have physically that we have to deal with. Mental health is a big part of what we do when we talk about wellness. Mental health feeds into how do we relate to people and how do people relate to us. Do we want to be here? Do we want people to care about us? Because that is an active part of being well. You have to care about someone else for them to call and look at you. So my last thing here was spirituality and connectivity and relationships. To me, that's 29% of being well. That is the outward and spiritual sign of the inward and spiritual grace. That is basically what we look to achieve, and it is an important part of where we are. And so think about wellness, think about why you're well, think about your last physical, think about what the doctor said, think about whether it's weight control, think about whether it's not drinking as much, think about all those things and the habits that we deal with to be well. So wellness means basically good self-stewardship. It's taking care of ourselves. Now we also in relationships take care of one another. Whether it's children, whether it's grandparents, whether it's your partner. The bottom line is there is everything that's included in that. And you see up here, the heart, exercise, good food, sleeping. God, could we all sleep? For old men, this is a big issue. But the bottom line is also there is an exercise phenomenon that a lot of people ignore. And even at an older age, people 70 and older, exercise is an important part of staying flexible, because what's the biggest accident we find in people over 68? Falling. And to not fall means you have to have 2 steady feet or some aid like a cane or something to prevent it, but having the musculature to do that makes a big sense. So, in other words, we have to be active. When we consider wellness, we have to consider everybody, the whole being, and it starts with us. I look at this and I think to myself, the number of teenagers that I saw in Ridgewood who were obsessed with steroids and one thing or another because they wanted to make their body bigger, better, and stronger. And it's like, you're already bigger, better, and stronger than anybody else that's playing your sport. Why do you feel you need to do more? Well, there's always that urge to do more. And we saw parents come in with small children and young children who were never happy enough. Does he look right to you? Yeah, it looks fine. He's got 5 fingers, 5 toes, he's staying up, he says hello, he's doing the language that he should be doing at his age. But the bottom line was, is he okay? And everybody needed that reassurance that the whole human being that I produced was what should be. And so a lot of what doctors did, certainly pediatricians did, was reassure. Just reassure people that you're doing the right thing. You're okay. You're fine. Keep doing what you're doing. I was in a middle school this morning. Our middle schools in Ridgewood are always the sea of interesting information and issues. And I dealt with an assistant principal, and I find myself not necessarily always going in and doing medical advice. Sometimes I'm just going and doing therapy, listening, and just listening, because of how parenting in some cases has become so adversarial to the schools that it is difficult for administrators to do their job. I spoke to a nurse today who has not yet been able to even do heights, weights, blood pressures, and vision screens on kids, which is a state requirement, because she's been so busy with special needs. So the bottom line is that we find ourselves shifting in this, and we have to consider the whole human being. Everybody doesn't fit everywhere. Okay, wellness is multidimensional. And so, let's look at that. Physical, nourishing, healthy body, exercise, nutrition, sleep. We all know that. We've been all taught by that by our mothers, our grandmothers, all that. Eat healthy, so forth and so on. Don't skip a meal, whatever, and so forth. Engaging in mental health is engaging the world through learning, problem solving, creativity. We all know that one of the ways we keep our minds going, doing crossword puzzles, doing all that kind of stuff, things that we do to stay whatever's happening. And I will often say to people, I know that person's name is Marjorie. I don't remember their last name, but I will in an hour. Yeah. And that happens at church or whatever. I'll remember, patients will come up to me now who are adults and say, "Oh, Dr. Yankus, it's so good to see you." And I'll remember, that was Billy. Your mother was nuts. On the other hand, on the other hand, I saw you every Saturday because she could never make it in on the weekday, but I can't remember your last name. And then an hour later, when every Billy's gone, I'll remember the last name and all the rest of it. But what I'm getting at is that mentally engaging, the more you're engaged, the more you're involved, the less you are likely to start the path down to Alzheimer's, forgetfulness, whatever, although some of that is thoroughly genetic. Emotional, being aware and of accepting, expressing our feelings, and the understanding of others. We don't exist alone. We need to understand how other people feel and how easy it is to hurt them. And sometimes that gets a little tough as we get older. But we teach our kids to share, and we are not yet teaching them enough to listen. Spiritual. Everything that I looked at to prepare for this brought up a spiritual component to wellness. Whether you're religious, whether you're a member of a church or not, whether you're a member of a congregation or not, there is something about the search for meaning or a higher purpose. Alcoholics go to meetings, and there is a higher purpose. There is a higher person, a higher being. People who don't even accept actual religion, and God knows we've all met many, is the issue of acceptance. There is a spirituality that you have to acknowledge. There's some things that move around you and over you and about you that are different, that are not coming from within you. And so we acknowledge that spiritual being is certainly very much a part of it. It is that part of like today, social, connecting, engaging. We're here. And thank you, lunch ladies, for all you did, for making the lunch and doing all that, please. Very good for all you did. Being social is one way to stay well. It's one way to keep your mind going. Coming together while we can. There's no blizzard. The hurricane hasn't come to us. The bottom line is we can be here today. And why did I join St. Elizabeth's? I had all 7 churches at my feet when my wife decided to go to Patterson to St. Paul's, and I decided not to. I could have stayed where I was. I could have gone to other places. I tried other places. But the difference was here, there was a social nature to welcoming that was critical to my being here alone. And once everybody got over saying, "Where's your wife? Are you married? What's going on?" Once everybody got over that, and I said, "I'm married, 55 years. She doesn't go here, but she comes and knits. But on the other hand, that's her ministry. But on the other hand, I'm here, and it's okay for me to be here alone." And that took some time, because in my old parish, if I showed up for a funeral, it was always like, "Where have you been? Where are you? What's going on?" It's like, That's not the point. The point socially is connecting and engaging. If I died tomorrow, I would hope somebody cared. If something happened, I would hope somebody would visit. That's part of what wellness is about, keeping connection. Here is one way to keep that connection. And environmental, fostering positive relationships, and so forth. It sounds sort of Boy Scouty, Girl Scouty, but the bottom line is we do care about what goes on in Ridgewood. I'm meeting tomorrow with the superintendent of schools because we have this big thing with fields in Ridgewood. By the way, we have 4 artificial fields. Now, the kids don't get down on their hands and knees and eat the stuff, so they're not going to die of cancer, but then there are enough parents in Ridgewood that are worried that they're playing on them. But we put them in because they always used to flood. God knows what was in the floodwaters. So the bottom line is, environmental is a concern. It's not as much of a spiritual and religious and wellness concern, but for those parents, it's a wellness concern. Now, for having grown up in Glen Rock, breathing the smoke from all the Patterson mills that used to blow our way all the time, interestingly enough, the highest rate of bladder cancer was in that part of Glen Rock because we inhaled all those cinders. Now, we're told going back to the early 50s, post-World War II, when we were just making things. But the bottom line is, environment is important to us, and it's important for us to pay attention. Habits. This is where wellness counts. What are our wellness habits? I don't care if you eat seaweed. I don't care if you come to me and say, I take 7 vitamins a day, although we should be taking vitamin D and C. But the bottom line is, a lot of people come to an office and say, spread out the pills and say, this is what I'm doing. Okay, if it keeps you well, fine. But everybody doesn't have to do it. And the habits that are important is, did you get a good night's sleep? Did you have 3 drinks before you went to bed? Well, I fell right to sleep right after my 3 Manhattans. Great. But I woke up at 2 a.m. and I couldn't go back to sleep, so I read for a while. Well, you just broke your circadian rhythm and sleep cycle. So the bottom line is that wasn't wellness. That wasn't healthy. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a Manhattan once in a while, but the bottom line is you have to think about it in the context of what it is that is the key to your wellness. What makes you well may not make what your partner is well and what everybody else in the family is well. You have to stick to what works. Habits do not have to be equally balanced. You don't have to do the same thing every day all the time. You don't have to do, you can weigh. So you forgot your vitamins today, so what? It's not critical that you run home to get them. Balance. What is the balance for you? I mean, I remember patients that had pockets full of stuff because they were afraid they'd miss it. Why? You're going to live without it. You did before you started taking them. So wellness is a goal, and it's an achievable goal, but wellness is not necessarily something that is done without work. It requires our work to be well. So let's move toward the community, us, why we're here. What's our role? I mean, what's our role as members? What's our role as one another is to pay attention. Who are we missing? Who's not here? Who do we care about? That's attention. And is somebody paying attention to me? The other is support. One of the things congregations have historically always been known for, not just the clergy, but one another, is supporting one another. Did you bring food when someone was sick? Did you call someone to find out how they were? Did you call someone to say, how did it go in the hospital? Or did you even visit if that was a possibility? Support is part of congregational wellness, and that is something that we seek and look for. We are blessed at St. Elizabeth's with very active vestry and very active wardens and so forth who are involved and do a lot of things. But the important part of it is that support is what makes a congregation work. We're in a diocese of vanishing congregations. We're in a diocese that doesn't have clergy, that shares them. One of my school systems in Leonia doesn't have clergy, and they have a parish, and they're struggling. The bottom line is their wellness is from the support they get for one another to get people periodically. Intervention. There's nothing wrong with intervening. There's nothing wrong with raising your hand at an annual meeting at the church and say, You know, you need to turn the heat on in the winter. Or, you know, your air conditioning, for God's sakes, turn it on, you know, that kind of thing. Intervention is kind. It can be nasty, but it's about being kind. My intervention professionally was to try to keep people well, make people well, and occasionally, on a rare occasion, remove people for their safety. There's nothing worse than having to remove a child from abusive parents for their own safety. And we are blessed in Ridgewood with a number of families who are always available day and night to take those children from the Division of Youth and Family Services that have to be removed from their families. And some of those families are here in Ridgewood. They don't come from Patterson. So the bottom line is we have to understand intervention. Resolution. So, you know, we have to resolve to be well. It's work. That's my main point. We stay well together, and we stay well through the work of doing it together, and ongoing work of care. Coffee hour. This is the most wonderful coffee hour week. Now I'm glad coffee hour is back because I hated summer coffee hour. I mean, that was artificial iced tea and artificial lemonade just sucks. I mean, the bottom line is it's not healthy, and yet I understand. And I understand coffee hour is one of those things that's very hard in churches for people to get. I did attend a church that is now closed in Montvale, where coffee hour was like a lunch spread and a huge pot of brewed tea and one thing or another that was just marvelous. But it was a gathering, and people stayed. And part of the wellness was a gathering and acknowledging everybody else's work to make that happen. And so that was the ongoing work of care, because if you stayed long enough at coffee hour, people would say, how did it go last week in the hospital? Or what happened to Billy? Is his arm coming along? Or, you know, how's college? One of the things we don't ask about families here is when the kids go off to college is how are they doing? How are they doing in their schools or boarding schools? I had 3 kids that went to boarding school, and so it was the same thing. 2 of them went to an Episcopal school. I mean, you know, the clergy there made sure everybody was fine because you went to chapel every day. You couldn't miss. But the bottom line was connection. And I think that is one of my key messages on wellness is connection. So what about you? Pay attention. Pay attention to where you are now today and how you feel. And are you happy with your medical support? Are you happy, hopefully, with your spiritual support? Because that is your key to wellness, as those of us, and I'm 79, those of us that are reaching the end, and let's face it, you only get to do old age once. And so the bottom line is, I would certainly hope, you know, that we are paying attention. Set a goal. Whether it's weight reduction, whether it's blood pressure reduction, whether it's just, I'm going to go to church and I'm going to do coffee hour, or I'm going to be a Sunday school teacher, or whatever. God forbid, Sunday school. I say that only as a pediatrician. I mean, where was our last academy meeting? Disneyland. I mean, for God's sakes, we're around Mickey Mouse all the time. Can't we go someplace adult? But on the other hand, the issue is volunteering. You know, it's all about volunteering. And I've got to say, of all the parishes I've been to in 2 countries, because I was in my first life, this is my 3rd life. In my first life, I lived in another country for a while, and you know, the issue there was that people came together because we were expat community, and that was very important. And the Episcopal Church there was bilingual, of course, but very important that we were aware of our vulnerability, but we were together. And in any case, developing good health habits goes without saying. And my comment to people, you know, when they turn to us and say, well, you know, I walk 8 miles every day and I only eat Wheaties for breakfast and I do this, that, and the other thing is like, are you happy? Does it make you feel good? If it does, do it. If having a Manhattan before dinner makes you feel good and you're 79 years old, so what? You're not going to live to be 94, and if you do, great. You know, my grandmother did, and she had one every night before dinner. But that was genes. That had nothing to do with old Fitzgerald. Understanding wellness is work, and it is not a gift. I understood that from my practice with children and adolescents. It is not a gift. When you see a kid who hits the wave and is suddenly paralyzed from the neck down, it is no longer a gift. it's gone. When I see parents give birth to children who have all sorts of horrible syndromes, it is not a gift. That becomes a burden. And then if you don't have the support of your community, that burden becomes overwhelming, and that is all clear. Where we come in is to understand that if we are well and our children are well, we have received a gift, thanks be to God. So what's my job? My job is to be responsible for patients in wellness. That's my job, is to keep them well. My job is to be a good listener. How many times have I had a mother come in, a lot, to tell me that Billy's black and blue marks are just because he falls a lot? No. What comes out when I go into the kid alone, he says, my dad threw a TV at me last night. Now we're into the Division of Youth and Family Services for abuse. The bottom line is, this is Ridgewood, this is Wyckoff, this is Glenrock, this is Hohokus, this is not Patterson. I'm not saying that to be dramatic. I'm just saying that we have to keep our ears open and be good listeners. When somebody comes to you and says, I don't feel well, why? And that's my job, is to ask why. You look for signs in the exam, you ask the what. But my job is mostly to ask the what. Andy's job is to ask the why. And together, that is how we look at wellness. The clergy we look at as serving the community as organizers and leaders. There's no question they're community organizers. And they attend to our spiritual needs. We have needs, and whether we acknowledge them or not, and I'm trying to figure this out with my kids who have sort of abandoned church for all sorts of reasons, is what are their needs and how do they feel that? I mean, right now one in Florida is preparing for a hurricane, the other one is, you know, in Hong Kong, and the other one's somewhere else. How do they get together and feel wellness in terms of their spiritual needs and raising their children outside of a religious community? The clergy lead worship. We participate. That is, participating in a community and validates our part of that community. We are part of this community, whether you're a lay reader, whether you sing terribly in the choir, whether you sing well in the choir, whether you sit in the pews. And in this parish, I've never figured out why, you know, we still have people kneeling all the time, we still have people sitting, we have people standing. By the way, folks, we stopped kneeling in 1972. You can do it if you want to, but no other church gets as involved in this. But leading worship, pay attention to the choir. In any case, the clergy's job is to answer the why. Why did this happen? Why did my wife die? Why did my kids have cerebral palsy? Why does this happen? Why? And those are philosophical questions that doctors rarely can answer. We can come up with genes, we can come up with disease, we can come up with failure to immunize, we can come up with all sorts of things. But we look to our clergy people to answer the why. But here's the key to all wellness, is be present. Be present in someone's life. Be present in your own life. Be present in your children's life. Call your brother and sister who you haven't talked to in 6 months. Be present, because that presence makes a huge difference in wellness. And it is a practice, and it gets us back to my original point that wellness is work. So, the faith-health collaboration really does improve our community. I mean, we are an organic mess. We are to improve the community by being a community going forward. We need to continue to look at what makes us well, not just the building, that's great, and all that, but the bottom line is the people in it. I mean, if this building vanished tomorrow, it's the people. And I'll give you an example. When Pat and I go to our Florida trip, we go to Sanibel Island, which, by the way, has been evacuated. St. Michael and All Angels last year, or 2 years ago, with that hurricane, basically was devastated. The parish closed. The columbarium disappeared. All those ashes of the former residents now are in the ocean, because Sanibel's a small island, and now they're anticipating 10 to 15-foot waves, which will hit St. Michael's and All Angels again, which just recently opened. So the bottom line is, what happened to that congregation? That congregation moved to Fort Myers, to a parish there that did survive, but stayed together and came back to reopen. And so as a consequence, we look at an Episcopal parish that faced the loss of everything Think about this building, this room, where we are right now. If 15 feet of water came through and washed out the whole thing, we would start again because we are a community and we're still here, regardless of the money in the bank. By the way, the bank goes too. The banks in Sanibel got wet and all the money left and all the rest of it. So the bottom line is the community made St. Michael and All Angels come back. That was true of the community church, that was true of St. Ignatius, the Catholic Church on the island, and all the rest. They disappeared, but the congregations did not. They were well congregations, and that wellness provided the safety for them to return to worship together again in the Episcopal Anglican tradition that they knew. There are a lot of Canadians there, so it's Anglican as well. How do we foster a sense of belonging within a parish? Well, we do that now. You're here. You know, we had lunch today together. People put this together, and thank you to the ladies who did lunch. Fostering a sense of belonging means I care, you care, we're here, and I can't tell you how much that energy means to some of us. A parish is like a marriage. Not everybody's happy all the time. God knows not everybody's happy all the time. And it's never perfect. It's never what you want all the time. Would I want Andy to wear a chasuble? I would love it, but he's not going to do it. You know, the bottom line is a well parish takes active involvement, and by God, this parish does that. We will survive. Showing up. This is the other key word to wellness, is just showing up for one another, showing up for the parish, showing up on Sunday, showing up on Sunday night, showing whatever. I was grateful when the Sunday night services were around because my office hours on Sunday were 9 to 12, so I couldn't come. Now, of course, with it being on tape, I can play the tape some other time. But the bottom line was it was helpful to migrate and move into a new world of availability of worship that didn't involve fixed hours, that you had to be somewhere at a time. Parish survival takes work, and the congregants reach the benefits of a caring community, which I think we have. So how do we engage and empower? Think of that last word, empower. How do we empower ourselves to stay where we are? When my wife started on the standing committee, or whatever committee it was of the diocese, there were 146 parishes in the diocese. Then it was 114, and now it's less. We're survivors. And I say that proudly. We are survivors, not because we're in Ridgewood. There's two Episcopal churches in Ridgewood, but we're survivors. And so I say that because we are engaged, and we stay engaged. That's important. But we have to continue to empower people to be here. Why are we here? Why would I come from Malwa every Sunday to be here in the winter? Why? What is the empowerment we get from being here? Our task at St. Elizabeth's, as I see wellness, and let's get back to the key topic here of wellness, is to live out our ministry. Wellness is a ministry. Wellness is definitely a ministry. So we need to live it out as a congregational community, because congregation just means us. In a society with increased isolation, we are committed to connectedness. When I went to that middle school today in Ridgewood and we talked about absentee rates. There are a lot of kids absent that can't come to school because they can't leave home. They're afraid. And so they're isolated. And so their friends don't come over. And you know, we don't have truant officers anymore like we used to just drag them out kicking and screaming and coming to school for them to run away anyway, which they do. So the bottom line is these are isolated kids. But the families that empower their isolation are also isolated as well. And so we have a lot of isolated people living right around here within a block. The bottom line is, how do we commit to connectedness and outreach? Famous church word, outreach. Reach out to people. We pray and serve God's people across generations and all economic levels with dignity, and I can say that we get an A+ for that. We do that, and we've done it well. But we need to keep remembering this should become a parish of all kinds of couples. It should become a parish of all levels of economic couples or not couples. For the longest time, we were the whitest Christian heterosexual church in the diocese. We have to move that because there are people out there that want to belong to us. And then ultimately, we give but not expecting a return. And your mother told you that. But the bottom line is, she was right. Ultimately, what can you do? Well, take a break. What is wellness? Take a break. Once in a while, just take a break. Turn off TV. Put the New York Times down or the puzzle, whatever you're doing. Take a deep breath. Call somebody up. Just take a break. Share a meal. God, I can't think the last time. I mean, women are wonderful at this. Men are not. I remember going to an all-male event here at St. Elizabeth's when I was relatively new, and it was pathetic. I mean, men showed up in suits, they showed up in casual wear, clutching beer bottles, looking so uncomfortable. It was just awful. And the object was to start a men's kind of group and whatever. And so we broke up into groups, and we were to meet every, I don't know, once a month, every couple of weeks, whatever. And we had my group had dinners here. The object was we were to bring the dinner and share conversation about being a man and a family, being a man, growing older, being whatever. We were so afraid. One man came and had a caterer. One man came and had his wife in the kitchen serving us dinner. Unbelievable. And it abandoned before I got to bring my food. But the bottom line was one came with a Bible because he wanted to read it to us. It was like, well, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about us. And we were so afraid as men. And one group went to Hohokus Inn, had drinks, dinner, had a wonderful time, and I have no idea what they talked about. But the bottom line is we were incapable of sharing as men. And so, again, sharing a meal shouldn't be a pain. It shouldn't be tough. It shouldn't be frightening. Pray and meditate. I think we do that, but I don't know how many people actually meditate and stop, close your eyes, take a deep breath, breathe in, breathe out, and think. It really does slow your heart rate. It really does. And when you're angry or whatever, it really is sometimes, because then you won't explode. Most mothers know this when they're about to come down on some toddler, some kid, some whatever. Adult males don't always know that. Periodically evaluate your stressors. This sounds like a psychiatrist, but it's true. What makes you angry? What makes you sad? What makes you upset? Think about it. Can you control that? Are you empowered to change that? And if you can't change that, let's say you commute every day on the railroad from Ridgewood to go to work, and the subway doesn't work, or you're left because the train isn't running and you're stuck in Grand Central Station, not Grand Central, but in Penn Station, whatever. You can't control that. Sit back, relax, and enjoy it. You can't control it. I mean, and just do whatever it is you have to do. And ultimately, identify people in your life and be present for them. I think that is probably the most important thing other than your partner. And maybe show up for your partner. You may not be showing up for them much anymore either. And ultimately, wellness is what you're doing now by being here. Thoughts, questions, that's it, folks. As Bugs Bunny used to say. Questions? Anything? We live in a great community and great county because we don't all live in the same community, but I think the issue of wellness that I wanted to convey to everybody is wellness is work. Wellness involves other people. You can't do it alone. You can do a lot of it alone, but most of it is going to involve contact, empowerment, and we just need to work on that. And if we don't, okay, so you're home alone. How do you get out of being home alone? Call Andy, call somebody, do whatever and say, I'd like to come to church. I'd like to just come to a dinner or whatever. Or meet them in town for something, coffee or whatever. I think that's important. And I think as I look at it from the standpoint of, I live in a community in Malwa that is not a senior community, but it is 70% senior. The number of lonely people living alone in their condos who don't go anywhere. Now, the women often go out to lunch, but the men are very much alone. And so trying to get activities and so forth at the pool, clubhouse, and whatever for them is important because they can walk, if they don't have a dog, they don't even come out. I was amazed when I was on the board how many men basically had no contact with their children who live nearby. And so it's just that part of loneliness that we don't have to have. And so togetherness is a gift, wellness is a gift, practice wellness. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wayne.
You're welcome.
For the wonderful presentation, and I think a really thoughtful but also thought-provoking way to kick off our series as it ties to ourselves, but this beautiful community that really is a gift to all of us and can be a gift to all those around us. Before I get into talking about the next series really quickly, there's a lot of people I just need to thank you, to thank for making today happen. So I wrote them down, so I'm going to read my list to make sure I don't forget anyone. Joan, Caroline, Gay, Marnie, Gretchen, Barbara and Kevin, Sherry, Sue, Ryan, Grace, and Reverend Andy, and all the women from the book club. Thank you so much for coming together, thinking of how to make this happen, and for this beautiful layout. So thank you so much. Our next event will be on December 11th, and that will be around wellness during the holidays, focusing on grief, loneliness, and just the pressures of the holidays. So if you have any questions, feel free to come and ask me, Andy, Ryan, Grace. There's dessert, so please feel free, if you want to get a second plate, I see some salad and soup left. Feel free to keep just being in fellowship with one another, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully at our next one. Thank you.
Thank you.